Hilchos Metam'ei Mishkav Umoshav Perek Shneim Asar. The laws of those who communicate impurity to the things that they lie on or sit on, chapter 12. We're still on the topic of the Am Ha'aretz, the Jew who is uneducated about the specifics of the laws of purity and impurity, and therefore the sages declared a default impurity on all of his stuff. And as we've seen, there's actually two levels of his impurity. Impurity of corpse impurity, Metam'ei, and also Tamei Midras. We treat him like a zav. Just like a zav who steps on, meaning sitting, standing, lying, hanging, leaning on any of the things that are meant for those activities, becomes Tamei Midras with that very high level of Tumah of a zav, so does the Am Ha'aretz's belongings have that default status of impurity. The question today is what happens if someone else's stuff ends up by an Am Ha'aretz? Let's say you have a chaver, a person who is a scrupulous Jew, and he deposits a utensil by an Am Ha'aretz, or he lets his house be entrusted or be guarded by an Am Ha'aretz. What happens then? And the operative rule that's going to be going through the entire chapter today is what's called Rishus Am Ha'aretz. Once something enters the domain of the Am Ha'aretz, or once a place becomes the domain of an Am Ha'aretz, then no matter whose stuff is in that area, it becomes impure like an Am Ha'aretz's stuff becomes impure. If it's not, then it's not. Even if an Am Ha'aretz is around, as we're going to see, an Am Ha'aretz doesn't step out of his boundaries. He doesn't take things that are not his. He doesn't steal. He doesn't want to look like a thief. And therefore, if he's not entrusted or not given full rights to the domain, things around him are not necessarily impure, as we're going to see all the details in today's chapter. Says the Rambam halacha aleph, hamafkid kelim eitzel am ha'aretz. If you have a chaver who deposits utensils by an am ha'aretz, or he gives a utensil or an article to a am ha'aretz artisan to do some work with it. Hare'elu tmeim, because you've put it into the rishus, into the domain of the Am Ha'aretz, they become impure at both levels. Tmei midras. They become impure on account of corpse impurity and midras impurity. If the Am Ha'aretz knows the chaver who's depositing a utensil, he knows that he's a Kohen, he knows that he has to eat truma, and truma is always kept to a higher standard, so then the Am Ha'aretz behaves a little differently. He'll make sure that these things don't come in contact with corpse issue stuff. So it's not going to be carrying the corpse impurity, avol tmei midras, but it will still carry the tumah of midras. Why? Not because the Am Ha'aretz himself might mistreat it, but because it's in his home. And in the home of an Am Ha'aretz, they're not careful. And therefore, perhaps the wife of the Am Ha'aretz, who is a nida, will sit on them without realizing. And as the commentaries explain, we're talking about a situation where you deposited it there for a long time, so it's hanging out in the home. The wife is not careful. If it was only for a short time, then actually it would actually be pure, as the commentaries say. But the wife might just sit on them. In the homes of Am Ha'aretz, they're not careful about ritual impurity, and therefore you have to treat it as if it was in the home of the Am Ha'aretz. Halacha beis hamaniach kelev b'fnei Am Ha'aretz goes even more so. You're not depositing it. You're simply on the street, and you put down a box or something with utensils in front of an Am Ha'aretz, v'amar le, and you tell him shmor li es elu, guard these things for me. The moment you say guard these things for me, hare'elu tmei midras, they become tamei with the tumah of midras. They're in the Am Ha'aretz's possession, and very possibly that his clothes may touch them at that moment. Because you're outside in an area where corpse impurity is not so common, so at that moment we're not going to say that it's impure with corpse impurity. However, if you put the box onto his shoulder, right there, so now tmei midras utmei meis. It's like you actually put it into his possession, so you're tamei on both counts. Shachach kelav beveis hakneses. If somebody forgets some articles or some utensils in a shul, even though Am Ha'aretz's attend that shul, they're pure. And as the commentaries say, it doesn't matter whether they stayed in the same place or when you come back they've been moved. Because it's not called the complete domain of an Am Ha'aretz. Most people are chaverim in a shul. However, if you left your clothing or something in a bathhouse, who hasn't this happened to you? You forgot your towel in the mikveh. And you come, and you found them as they are. Here the Rambam adds that point, because you have to have found them as they are. Tohidim, then they're pure, and we don't suspect that they were touched, even though a majority of people there are Amei Haaretz. However, if it was moved, as the commentaries say, then you have to worry, and you have to treat it as Tamei. Even though it's pure, we teach people not to do that. Again, in a bathhouse. Ideally, don't leave your stuff in a bathhouse. In a shul, that's fine, again, because the Am Haaretz are not the majority over there. What happens if somebody left his wine press or wine pit unattended? They used to have a press, right? You press the grapes and it would go down into a pit. Even though the chaver left and went into the city, because these presses were typically outside the city. Ubo matzah am haaretz b'tzidah. He comes back and he finds an am haaretz right next to it. Tohidin, it's pure. Here we see this principle for the first time. It's going to come up again multiple times in this chapter. If the am haaretz doesn't have permission to come inside, he's not going to violate that boundary, and he's not going to touch what's in there. Halacha gimel hamoiser mafteach beisei la'am haaretz. A person is a chaver leaving his house, and he gives the key to his house to an am haaretz to watch. Fascinatingly, even though the am haaretz has access to the house, kol shebabayis Torah, whatever's in the house is pure. Shalei masar le'al shmiras hamafteach, because all he gave him was the authority to watch the key. He never gave him authority to go into the house, so the house doesn't become rishus am haaretz. Halacha dalid. If somebody places utensils in the windows of a bathhouse, the best equivalent to have for this is like lockers. It's a locker room. And you put stuff down there, then you go do your bathing thing and you come back. And you actually lock them. Again, even though you gave the key to an am haaretz, your utensils are pure because you only gave him the authority to watch the key, not to go into your locker. Same thing if you did a seal on the window, or you made some kind of other sign on it. Even if when you come back, the signet or the seal is ruined a little bit, in all these scenarios, they are pure. Why is it pure if the seal is ruined? Commentaries say it's a double doubt, svek sveka. First of all, you don't know who did the ruining. Maybe it came by naturally because of the wind, or maybe it was a person. Even if it was a person, maybe it was an am haaretz, maybe it was a chaver, you don't know. And therefore, you can assume that it's pure. Halacha hey, hamaniach am haaretz b'seich beisai l'shamrei. A chaver needs to leave his house, for whatever it is. And so he leaves an am haaretz inside the house as a security guard. But he himself sits from far. So the question now is, the am haaretz is in the house, on your authority, to watch the house. You've given him authority to watch the house, so maybe it becomes like his rishus, but you can see from far. So the Rambam says it depends where you are. If you're close enough that you can see who's coming in and out of the house, so you've solved half of the problem. The am haaretz is still in your house, and he can touch things. But not everything becomes impure. Anything in the home, food, drink, or not tightly sealed pottery utensils, are impure. Those the am haaretz probably touched. But the things you lie on and things you ride on, and pottery that is sealed tightly, those are pure. Because those, the sages did not decree on in this case where you can see at least who has access to the house. But if you can't see who's coming in and out, then kol shebabayis is tamei. Everything in the home is impure because the am haaretz knows you're too far away. He takes full authority, does whatever he wants. Even if the am haaretz himself was tied down or had no hands and feet, he can't touch things. Hakol tamei, everything is impure. In the domain of the am haaretz, and if it's in the domain of the am haaretz, it becomes impure like things belonging to an am haaretz. The commentaries explain it's very possible that the am haaretz, because he's comfortable in the home, you've given him authority, he'll invite friends, and you can't see who's coming in and out, and they'll touch everything and make everything tummy. Halacha vav, chaver shahaya yashin bebeisa shel am haaretz. You have a chaver, scrupulous Jew, who is sleeping in the home of an am haaretz. So they're literally in the rishus am haaretz where things are impure. But the chaver has his stuff in very, very close proximity to him. There was some clothing folded under his head. His sandals and his jug right in front of him. They are actually pure, even though again they're in the rishus of the am haaretz, because they're so close to him, they're presumed to be guarded by the owner, the chaver. The am haaretz won't touch them, because he says to himself, he's going to wake up right now, he'll see me. And am haaretz do not want to look like thieves. Opposite scenario. It's the chaver's house, and the am haaretz is borrowing a bed to sleep on it. And he's sleeping on it inside the home of a chaver. So his bed, because he borrowed it, becomes his rishus, it's his domain. But the house belongs to the chaver. Says the Rambam, ein tamei ala isa hamita, only the bed becomes impure. And wherever he can stretch his hands out and touch, also becomes impure. That's the extent of his rishus within the chaver's house. He establishes a domain on the bed and everything that he can reach around it. Not past it, because again, past it is a boundary that's the chaver's house. He won't want to be a thief, go into a place that's not his. Halacha ches, chaver she'amar la'am haaretz. If a chaver tells an am haaretz, shmerli parazu, please watch this cow. Shaloi tikanis labayis, oy shaloi teshaber es hakelim. Guard the cow that it shouldn't go into the house or it shouldn't break the utensils. Hari abayis v'hakelim tohirim. So then the house and the utensils are pure. Same idea as the key. Shaloi masar le'al shmiras hapara. All you've given him is the access to guard the cow, not the house and the utensils. But if you worded it a little differently and you said, Shmerli bayizeh, Please guard the house that the cow shouldn't come in. The kelim elu, guard the utensils that the cow shouldn't break them, and now they're impure, because you've given him authority over the house and over the utensils. A person, a chaver, leaves that am haaretz in his house. He's given him permission to stay there, not on a specific bed necessarily, like in the last case, just given him permission to stay there, and he leaves. And then he comes back. What did the am haaretz do in the interim? Says the Rambam, if you left him awake and you came back and he's awake, or he was asleep when you left and asleep when you came back, or you left him awake and he is now asleep, everything in the home is pure, assuming, as the commentaries say, that the am haaretz is still exactly in place, in the same exact place. Then you can assume that he did nothing, because you didn't give him authority to do anything, to go anywhere, except to stay in the house. Obviously, if he moved, commentaries say, now out of doubt, you have to assume that he's tamei, that he touched things and everything becomes tamei. However, if you left him asleep and you found him awake, you don't know what he's been doing since he's awake. Any place that's near to him, that he can stretch out his hand and touch it, tamei, it's impure. Now, we had a very similar case before where you let the am haaretz be a security guard in your home, and we said if you can't see who's coming in and out, the whole house is tamei. Here, you left the house, literally. He's the only one in there, so why isn't everything tamei? And here comes the core difference. In the last halacha, you gave him authority to be the guard. Here, you only gave him permission to be in the house. So he doesn't do anything more than what's given permission. The question that the commentaries raise is, why is this different than the case of the bed? In the case of the bed, we didn't care if he's awake or asleep. Wherever he puts his hand out becomes impure. Here, we're only saying that if you left him asleep and you came back awake, but in the other scenarios, we don't say that whatever's around him is impure, and the commentaries struggle with that. If anyone knows an answer online, please leave it in the comments. Similarly, if somebody leaves artisans or workers in his home, doing a job, the only place that we make impure is any place where they can stretch their hands out and touch it. We don't say, maybe when you weren't at home, maybe they climbed on a chair or on a ladder, and they touched some utensils or some food hanging above on the wall. Because they only do what you gave them permission to do. They're doing work. So wherever their hands are accessible to, becomes tamei. Anything past that is not going to become impure. The wife of a chaver leaves the wife of an am haaretz grinding in her house, grinding some wheat. Afilu paska harechayim. Even if the chaver's wife hears that the grinding stopped. Grinding stopped, it means the am haaretz's wife is free. She's not grinding anymore. Maybe she's doing something suspicious. Afilu hayushtayim. Even if there's two wives of am haaretz in her house, which means that for sure one of them could be grinding and one of them could be walking around touching stuff. Ein tamei ela makom sheyachelin livshut es yadan v'liga. We only say that what's impure is anything that's in their immediate accessible area, whatever they can touch. The Ein Naimrim, we don't say Shema ha'achas toichenes. Maybe one of the women stayed grinding. The hashniya bolsha kolsha babayis, and the second one checked out whatever's in the house. V'shema nisles v'alsa b'mkeimes hagvayis. Maybe she hung and climbed in all the high places. No, when an am haaretz is in your house on your terms, they only take liberty to what you've given them. Right around their area is impure. Everything else stays pure. Halacha Yud Aleph. Guy shows up at a door. Poor man, please give me some food. So the wife of the chaver says, okay, let me go inside, I'll get you some food. She goes into her house to get some bread. She comes back and he made himself at home. He's standing next to her loaves of bread. Afilu truma, even if it's truma bread, which is more holy, they stay pure. Same thing. The am haaretz didn't come in on his own terms. He came in because you kind of gave him permission. He will not touch things without permission. Same thing if a woman comes out and she sees in her front yard the am haaretz's wife is stoking some coals under a pot. The pot is pure. She won't touch things which she doesn't have permission to touch. Tax collectors, the king's tax collectors that came into the house, they wanted to take some collateral. The guy couldn't pay the taxes, so they come into the house to get some property. Kol shababayis tamei. The moment they walk in there, everything in the house is impure. Remember, these tax people were Jews, typically am haaretz. Because if it was a chaver, we would push him away. We would reject him, as we saw 2 days ago. So it has to be an Am Ha'aretz. The moment they come in, they probably touched everything, it's impure. However, if they're accompanied by a Gentile, later on they're believed to say we didn't touch anything, because they have fear of the Gentile. They won't go freely touching things. When do we say everything is impure? If we have other witnesses that they came inside, or they're holding the collateral, so they clearly came inside, we don't need them to tell us that information. But if they admit it on their own, they said, you don't know that we were in your house, but we came into your house and we didn't touch anything. They're believed, we have a principle in halacha, when you are our only source of information, if you create a prohibition with your mouth, you can create a permission with your mouth. So they said, we went in, now there's suspicion, and they add, we didn't touch anything, we believe them. Halacha Yud Gimel Haganavim Shenichnasu L'Sei Chabayis. Jewish thieves. They come into a house. They're Jewish people. Ein tamei ela mekayim raglei haganavim. Which part's going to be impure? Only where they walk. Mipnei shehein mefachadin milivloish ela davar shenoitlin b'mizuman. They're thieves, yeah? They're after something. But they're afraid to spend too much time there. So they go get what they want and they come back. So wherever they stepped, that's what's tamei. Umahin metamin b'mkayim alichasan. What do they communicate impurity to when they walk, or if you can trace their steps? Food and drink and open utensils. That's what they have time to check for. But things that you lie on or ride on. And pottery, tightly closed utensils to hide in they're pure. Why? Because they don't have enough time to start opening such utensils and checking them. They don't get involved in it. They go in, they steal, and they come out. So whatever is easy access in their way becomes impure. Whatever not, stays pure. If they're accompanied by a Gentile or by a woman, hakol tameh. So here, it's the opposite as before. In the last case with the tax collectors, if they come in with a Gentile, it makes it pure. They're scared of him. Here, if a thief comes in accompanied with somebody else, that means that he's comfortable in your home. He's not afraid of you. So he takes more time, he'll open more things, touch more things, so everything is impure. Halacha Yudalid, Hagaboyim v'Haganovim, Sha'asu tshuva v'Hechaziru me'atzma. Tax collectors or thieves that did tshuva, and they're returning what they stole from you. Leimach masiro, not because of fear, on their own. But Amru, when they give you your stuff back, they say, Leinaganu b'chol ma'ash haya babayis k'shenichnasu. You should know, we didn't touch whatever was in the house when we came in. Hareilu ne'emanim, they're believed, va'afilu al nekayim raglein, even on the area of their footsteps. They'll tell you, we didn't touch anything. They're doing tshuva, so no reason not to believe them. Halacha tezvav hameniach is basic pasuach u'mitzay pasuach. A person leaves his home by mistake unlocked, open, and he comes back and it's still open. Or he leaves it open and he comes back and it's locked. Even if he left it locked and he finds it open, so for sure somebody was there. But he checks his house and nothing is stolen. Then kol shababayis tahor. Whatever is in the home is pure. In all the cases. Shani Omer, because I can say, even though it seems like somebody's been to the house, at least in the last case when it was locked and you found it open, Shani Omer, I can say, Haganavim paschu v'nimlechu. Always give the benefit of the doubt. Maybe there were thieves here, they opened the door, but then v'nimlechu, they changed their minds. They went and they didn't come in. As long as everything at home is untouched, you can assume that. Halacha tezayin kurdaim sha'avad babayis. Person is looking for his axe. He lost his axe at home. Or he left it in one corner and he finds it in another corner. Habayis tameh. You have to presume that the home is tameh. The only way the axe got lost or moved, shani omer, is because I say, Adam tameh nichnas l'shamu natale. An impure person came in here and took it. How do we know he's impure? Because if a thief came in, that makes him into a rasha, and a rasha is presumed not to be expert in Tumah V'Tara, so he's probably impure. Halacha Yudzayin Hadarim Am Ha'aretz B'Chatzer B'Shachach Kelim B'Chatzer. A person is living in the same courtyard as the Am Ha'aretz, meaning there's two homes. Hadar im Am Ha'aretz B'Chatzer. Meaning there's an Am Ha'aretz's home, Chaver's home, and they share a courtyard. B'Shachach Kelim B'Chatzer. And the Chaver forgets some utensils in the courtyard. Afilu chaviyos mukafes tzamid pasil, a tanur mukaf tzamid pasil, even if it's barrels that are sealed tightly or an oven that's sealed tightly, hare elu tmein. They're impure because the chatzar is also considered to be reshus am haaretz, domain of the am haaretz, and whatever is in his domain is impure. Ad sheyasa la tanur mechitza Gevaya asara tfachim, until he makes a partition wall, at least 10 tfachim tall. So it shouldn't be in the domain of the Amaretz, not in my domain. And it has to be obviously towards his side. Same case, shared domains, separate houses, and the chaver has a partition or a little sukkah that's in front of the entrance of the Am Ha'aretz. And as the commentaries explain, the Am Ha'aretz, in order to get out of his house, he passes by this mechitza or through this sukkah. And that's his legal right. Or there was an Am Ha'aretz's partition wall or sukkah in front of the chaver's house. Anytime a chaver leaves his utensils in that little sukkah or by that partition, they're impure. Because he has domain there. Either because it's actually his in the second case, or because he passes through it in the first case. You have two neighboring homes. The picture's a little bit too far. They should be literally adjacent homes, okay, one next to the other. But the roof of the chaver's house is taller than the roof of the Am Ha'aretz's house. The chaver, no problem, can put out utensils there or pure foods there, and they stay pure. Even though, and again, they're closer together. Okay, so even though the Am Ha'aretz can technically stand here and reach his hand out and touch them, we don't think that he does, because he'll look like a thief. It's not a good look. Or if it's a goy, Gentile who's his neighbor, if he puts stuff here and his roof is taller, no need to worry about the goy reaching over and touching stuff, making them impure or idolatrous wine. But if they were literally level, the roofs, or it's the Am Ha'aretz's roof who's taller, if the chaver puts down stuff over here on his roof, or either utensils or pure things, wherever the Am Ha'aretz could reach with his hand is becheskas tuma, is presumed to be impure. How come over here we don't say that he'll look like a thief? So the commentators explain, because when you reach down, you can say, oh, something fell down, I'm just trying to get it back. So as long as the Am Ha'aretz has that claim, he doesn't look bad. Yeah. So therefore, you have to worry that he might do that, and it's impure. You have two courtyards, one inside the other. The inner one belongs to a chaver, the outer one to an Am Ha'aretz. The chaver, in his inside courtyard, could spread out utensils and fruit, even though the hand of the Am Ha'aretz could technically reach there. Since I'm in the inner space and it's only my space, if you come into my space, you will look like a thief. That's not a good look, you won't do that. A courtyard that's divided with some low markers. So let's just use this example again. But instead of it being an open courtyard, they put a couple little poles to demarcate whose possession is where. The chaver b'tzad zeh, the Am Ha'aretz b'tzad zeh. Chaver lives on one side. Misifas is low markers, low poles. Chaver b'tzad zeh, the Am Ha'aretz b'tzad zeh. The chaver lives on one side, the Am Ha'aretz lives on the other side. Taharesav tahareis, afal pi sheyad Am Ha'aretz magas. Whatever is pure in the chaver's area stays pure, even if the Am Ha'aretz can reach there and touch it. Once you made the markers clearly showing where your possession is, the Am Ha'aretz will never come into your possession and look like a thief. A chaver takes a bucket and he's using a well or a pit of an Am Ha'aretz, and his bucket falls in, and he goes to bring something to get it up. While he left, we have to presume that the bucket became impure because it's been placed in the domain of an Am Ha'aretz for one moment. Even though, as the commentaries point out, if the chaver can't get his bucket, so the Am Ha'aretz certainly can't either. So the Am Ha'aretz won't be able to touch it. Nevertheless, what's called loy plug. The rabbis didn't differentiate. If you're in the possession of Am Ha'aretz, it becomes impure. Chav Gimel, Eishes Am Ha'aretz, shenichnas l'seich beisei shel chaver. The wife of an Am Ha'aretz goes into the home of a chaver, lahoitzi b'nai oibitay behemter shel chaver, to take out the child or the animal belonging to a chaver. Maybe she's a carpool driver or an animal shepherd. So she goes in there to take his stuff. Kol shebabayis tahar. She is, anything in the house is pure, because she entered without permission. Now, clearly, we don't mean literally without permission, otherwise she's kidnapping the kid. Commentators explain she's entering with permission only to do her job. So for everything else, it's like entering without permission. Same way if you sent me into your house to go get one thing, right? So I'm only doing that. I won't touch anything else. So she's taking your kids out or your animal out. That's all she's focused on, nothing else. Kadar chaver. Shehichnis k'dei reisav limker v'yarad lishtos. A chaver is a potter. He has a bunch of pots. He leaves his pots on the side and he goes down to get a drink by the river. But now customers are walking around checking out his pots. And maybe an Am Ha'aretz touched it. The ones that are inner, closer to him by the river, stay pure. The outer ones were probably touched and they're impure. When do we say this? If he left the pots right near the public domain. Because the passerby will certainly touch the outer ones when they walk. But if they were far from the public domain, he took them kind of all the way down with him to the river. If his tools are in his hand, it's clear that he is a seller. Then actually everything is impure. Because his tools show you that these pots are for sale. And everybody will touch them. If he doesn't have his tools, everything is pure. Because you can presume that nobody touched them. Because why would you touch them, someone's personal stuff, if they're not for sale? If a chaver leaves some food or drink at the entrance to his store and then walks deeper into the store, everything is impure. Because the passers-by will certainly touch them. And the passers-by might be Am Ha'aretz. Am Ha'aretz touches it, it becomes impure from Tumas Am Ha'aretz.